Welcome everyone on this new episode of Let's Talk AI. Today I am with Andreas Kretz. Andreas, how are you doing?
Hi. Yeah, great. Thanks.
I'm super happy to have you on the show. Um, in the data engineering space, I believe that you're a reference, and so I have many questions for you today. And if you're passionate about data engineering, this episode is for you. Just a quick reminder on Let's Talk AI, we're trying to give a 360 vision of the field of data and AI, sharing with experts and professionals. And today we have the honor to have Andreas on the show. So I'm super excited. Maybe, Andreas, for the people who might not know you, can you make a brief description of yourself?
For me, well, I'm from Germany. I'm a father of two kids and married, and yeah, I'm an engineer. I'm the typical German engineer, being for myself, working on engineering problems, and yeah, that's doing YouTube videos. And I have a academy at learndataengineering.com where I teach data engineering for people who want to become data engineers and for people who just want to learn data engineering to add to their skills like data scientists, data analysts, and
That's
so on.
awesome. I recommend to anyone who have interest in this field to follow you on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Your content is very interesting. Maybe to well, first I would love to hear a bit about your career and your background and how you ended up to what you're doing today. But just before that, I would love to ask you about what are you trying to achieve today.
Well, for me, it's for me personally, it's the fun. I changed from my old job and went solo and did this to have fun again and be able to help people. And so that's my general message, teaching people engineering, helping them grow in their career. And that's my goal um, on the side, and then provide for my family with that.
That's awesome. That's super. That's Well, let's deep dive later on. I might come back to the specific goal, but could you share with us a little bit a retrospective on what you've on the biggest points of your career, so
Yeah.
that we can maybe understand you a little bit better?
Yeah. So I can start a bit early in the beginning because, as I said, I'm the typical engineer. So I started not with actual software engineering first. Was an apprentice, or had an apprenticeship in mechatronics. So I was in a company where they're doing hydraulics, and I was working with hydraulic components and apprenticeship share there. And then after I finished that, I actually, because I always liked computers and was always interested in learning more, and yeah, coming from the gaming side, but wanted to get into software engineering and so on. And in Germany, we have these 2-year programs full time. It's called state certified, how's it called, engineer, basically. There
Mm-hmm.
for different skills, and also for software development for IT. So I did that, and afterwards I felt like, oh, I need to do more. This cannot be the end. I want to learn more, and so I moved into I got it to university, and then I started there and did a diploma there, and but it was also for uh, applied computer science. Then afterwards, I was I was looking for a job, and it was 2010, where the crisis was was problematic with the financial, and I got into a company doing SAP work, SAP customization, SAP development, where I stayed for a year, which I learned this is not really my thing. And I was lucky; I actually got a job at Bosch Rexroth, where I did my thesis for my diploma.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was there to build a system, a condition monitoring system, a system where you have machines out on the field, and these are sending you data. And the first idea was to just look at the data. And we I started basically building the complete infrastructure, and or planning the infrastructure. And in that place actually I got in touch with the whole big data thing. And it was not like I didn't study data engineering or plan to do it. For me,
Mhm.
it actually was the problem that led me there, because I knew I'm going to have a lot of machine data out that is coming in. And the stuff that I learned, like relational databases, didn't really work, or Java uh, processing didn't really work with that amount of data. So this then got me into the thinking, okay, how can I solve this? How can we create a project around this, or an infrastructure around this? Because at that time it was just two people, me and a data scientist. And yeah, then we started the data scientist worked with me, and we try to figure out what's the goal for the scientist, what kind of data does the scientist need, in what amount, and how often, and so on. And then basically that led me into that whole rabbit hole of big data, and data processing and engineering and so on.
Wow. Um, did you had to do some map reduce?
Yeah, at the time. It
Uh,
was actually, I at the time I was I was looking at two solutions. I remember two solutions in the beginning. I was looking at stuff like Cassandra,
mhm,
which is for absolutely not the right thing for anything IoT. But I then figured out, okay, we can do something with Hadoop, and setting up Hadoop. And once some data came in, I actually tried to figure out, okay, how can I process this in parallel, and leverage yeah, horizontal scaling. And yeah, playing around with MapReduce, looking through data, aggregating data. Yeah.
oh. And then did you had to like did you switch to Spark quickly, or
Yeah,
did you
but
stay
well,
with
at the
MapReduce
time,
for a while?
I remember I was back in the day. I was at on a Cloudera platform, and I think it came. They just added Spark then. In the beginning, it was just MapReduce, and then they
Mhm,
added Spark, and then I moved to Spark because like MapReduce. With MapReduce, the annoying part was you only have the map and the reduce phase, right? And then you need
mhm.
to save the data somewhere. And then
Yeah.
if you want to do multiple things, or you have a pipeline that needs multiple processing steps, you
Mhm.
always have to save it. And so that was not really cool. And then with Spark, the whole thing really took off. It was fun.
Awesome. And so this was the experience, and then what led you, or are there like more stages before you launch the academy and the YouTube channels, or did
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do it? What comes next?
yeah. So for me, the whole project then grew, and we became basically uh, a larger team for this. Then we got converted into a data lab that not only took this one thing, but then multiple projects on. And I became a team lead for the engineering part of this. And then end of 20, what was it, 2020, I took over the whole data lab. But then shortly afterwards, I quit because I wanted to follow up more with my academy. I also had a bit of health problems. A bit is under, how do you say it?
And just
Uh,
said,
Understated,
or
yeah. But like I did some coaching before, and I had fun, and I thought, let's see if I get healthy again, have fun again. And yeah, I did.
ah, and now you're helping many people with their data engineering skills, and also data science, data analyst.
Yeah,
That's very interesting, and I like that. Like I like how you phrased it. I like how you phrased two things mainly. The fact that you just figured out you weren't data engineering at the beginning. You just needed to do something, and you find the right tools. And then I like how you describe when you started to work with a data scientist, and there were just the two of you. And you kind of through time drew the line of okay, what do you need? How can I give it to you? And it seems, correct me, but it seems like this is very the beginning of how those roles combine to like make great use of data at scale, and there were no roadmap at the time. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's actually very true. From a role wise, for me it was always clear I'm not that interested in the science part. I'm not a machine learning guy. I'm an engineer. I know software development. I know databases and so on, and APIs and all that stuff. And my colleague was the PhD. He knew the algorithms, he knew the machines and so on. So that was a clear cut, but that was also um, for me still this is the right way of looking at this. Right?
hmm,
People sometimes think, we're hiring a data scientist and then the scientist is also doing the engineering. No, no, please no. For maybe for a proof of concept, could be good, but for everything after that, you should get an engineer.
hmm.
And for,
And
yeah, sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Now, for me also, like this process is always stayed the same, of how to figure out what tool to use, which how to plan a platform and so on,
Hmm.
because people very often are focused on the tools. They
Hmm.
think, oh well, I need to use Spark because everybody's using Spark, or I need to go on AWS and use this and this and this. But actually, you should always start in, okay, what is my data look like? How does the source look like, and what does the actual consumer, what's the goal, who is using that data and how, and then everything in between, then that automatically then comes when you understand these two sides
Hmm.
of the platform or of the project.
I see. Do you have students sometimes that struggles figuring out if they would like to become more expert in data engineering or more expert in data science?
So not a lot. This question is before they come into the academy.
Okay.
So I get this on LinkedIn or on Instagram. This question very often, like, what should I choose? For me, I always say, like, if you are more interested in algorithms, in math, in machine learning, in the actual creating of the models and so on, and working with the data there, then that should be your thing. If you're like coming from an analyst role or a PhD or something, right? That's your thing. But if you're coming from software development, everything engineering, and you think about entering this and you're not 100% like interested in that, in the machine learning stuff, go with the engineering part, because there you can leverage most of the things you already know and then add stuff to your
Right.
knowledge.
Right. And how would you place in this picture the machine learning engineers?
Well, for me, the machine learning engineers are a bit they are in between,
Okay.
and it's the natural way from both sides. Like, you have the scientist who's doing more engineering, and that maybe wants to do a bit more engineering, they move maybe more to the machine learning. And also the engineer who's working on the engineering but is interested in more of the ML stuff, then they move like in the middle.
Right.
It's not like
Right.
the engineer does not absolutely no. It's not
Hmm.
like the engineer does not know something about machine learning. We need to understand how the process works, and we need to understand what the scientists need, right?
Hmm.
But we're not building the models and then doing feature analysis and stuff, right? Or
Right.
maybe doing some cleaning because the scientist tells you, okay, I need this cleaned in that way. But
All right.
the machine learning engineer is like a in the middle of these two roles.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Um, so after this role, you mentioned that you have some personal issues, and you went full time with the academy, the YouTube channel. Um, so you mentioned a bit what you're trying to achieve today with the academy at the beginning, and I said that I would like to come back on this point. Um, so, for example, if I'm a data engineer and I want to improve my skills, in this section, I would like to talk a bit about principles, about fundamentals,
Mm.
about like how to get the core of the concepts uh, to be able to adapt with the techniques. But my question is like, is there more things that made you go all in on the academy to provide courses and tips about for data engineers? And I would also like to ask you in the same question, what are the main problems that you can see maybe young or advanced data engineerings face, and yeah, maybe see if you have some key tips, key solutions,
Mm.
or advice of what you see.
So for me, let's start with the problems, because the other things then basically come from the problems. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I started the academy. Was there is For me, there's not really a good solution out there for people starting with data engineering. You have these courses, but they're always like, there are these data engineering courses, and they have specific, okay, we're going to make you a data engineer, we're going to teach you Kafka, we're going to teach you Spark in this, and then maybe a data warehouse, and then that's it, right? And then please pay us a few $100 for this. And for me, this was always not the right way of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
With the academy, what always is my goal is to help people. Okay, focus less on the tools, focus more on understanding how does everything fit together. What are the parts of the platform that you see all the time? And there are a few parts, like general, like patterns, where the tools are in. They're always the same in every platform. I created this a few years ago. It's still the same, still works. And so giving people the basics, and then being able to then decide, okay, do I want to go more the open source route, for instance? Do I want to go more towards a cloud platform like AWS? Do I want to do something on GCP? And basically filling every of these blocks, for
Mm-hmm.
or helping them fill their knowledge for every one. Because once you understand, like, with when you think of streaming data, once you understand how a message queue works, and you learned this with Kafka, you can very easily go there and use another platform. Or if you used on AWS Kinesis, you know how a message queue behaves and why you would use it, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can use another one as well. So that's, for instance, one block. And so what I'm always trying is, okay, working on the fundamentals. Right now we're working on another data modeling course. I'm working on another platform architecture course to actually help people get better in this. We already have stuff there, but I think we can still improve on this, and adding more tools, more platforms. Like, this month we're going to release a GCP course, and like, yeah, that's my goal with this. And to have this not just a single course, have this as an academy where new stuff is coming in, and people can always learn more. That's also for people who are already engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Very often you see something new, or you have a platform and you want to get into Airflow, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then have something in the academy, just quick. It's a quick introduction. I don't know how long this course is, 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, people know all the basics. They can set it up. They can first start a proof of concept, and integrate it in their platform, for instance.
Hmm. I have some. I think I have some fun follow-up questions regarding this.
Sure.
First of all, what's the importance of hands-on practicing on doing proof of concepts for someone to learn?
From my side, or how I see this, it's super important. I I got these two. So, okay, What people say to me sometimes is they start with the academy and they say it's very theoretical, but it's only the first two modules that are theoretical, because as always, there are some things you need to learn. You cannot do immediately hands-on with
Hmm.
everything. But for most of the thing in the academy, how I teach it is, first you get in each course a bit of the theory, and then immediately hands-on, immediately run this as a Docker container, immediately go in and get your first exercises, and then afterwards people can improve on this, they can play around with it, they can work on it themselves. So for
Mm.
me, hands-on parts is, and maybe it comes because I learn hands-on, I'm not the big reader of books and so on, I'm a hands-on guy. I want to
Hmm.
play fiddle around with it and learn it
Right.
this way.
Right. And even if I learn with books, I feel like there's only one way to be sure 100% that what I learned or what I read is correct, is if I can make it work.
Yeah.
And if I have my thing deployed and everything's going well, well, I get it. I
Yeah,
get the concepts. But most of the time, it doesn't go according to plan.
that's true.
um, so, so that's super interesting. I think my follow-up question with that is, I'd like to have, because we're talking about hands-on, I'm thinking about a data engineer that is at the very beginning of its career, and one that is more like between 5 to 10 years of experience, which are like two very different profiles.
Mhm.
One maybe needs to understand Dockers and all the basic tools and the fundamentals and the principles, and then maybe start playing a little bit. And the other one have some expertise in some tools, maybe based on the projects that he've been doing or she've been doing.
Yeah.
My question regarding that is, would you have some tips for both of those profiles regarding approaching data engineering with this growth mindset and learning mindset?
Mm. But for beginners, I think for beginners it's very important that they don't try to learn everything. As I mentioned before, there are a few areas that you need to focus on, and you should start with the fundamentals, then take care of each of these areas, so that you have a streaming pipeline, so that you have a batch pipeline, right? With a few tools, and then you're already very, very good. People try to go in and think, oh, what is my big roadmap, what is everything that I need, and do I have, how can I learn this very quickly? It's not really, they should not really do this.
Mm,
Look around, like if you're in Germany, look around at the job descriptions that are out there, try to figure out which platforms are they using, or the industries that you maybe want to go, which platforms are they using, and then focus on these platforms and focus on the few important areas, and then that's it. The rest are you're going to learn when you have your junior job.
mm,
That's most of the stuff you're going to then learn there.
mm,
For So that's the main thing. Hands on, focusing on a few things, not trying to learn everything. As the um, as the experienced person, like coming from my side, when I worked in the old company, I was
mhm,
doing a lot with stream processing. I basically did nothing with data warehousing. Absolutely nothing. Was not really needed for what I was about and what I was working with. And as a data engineer who is out there, who is working with stuff, you always have these blind spots, these things that you are not using in your career right now, but might be good for the future.
mhm,
You might be, your company might be on a private cloud, because the data cannot be shared legally to the cloud or something, right? And you're good there, and you're good with the tools, but from this standpoint, you should think of, okay, um, most of the stuff now is happening on the cloud, so let's start with one cloud. Doesn't really matter which one. select one and start with one there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or like if you're like me, you're not working with data warehouses. Okay, then let's start. How what could you do? Like that's why I used in the academy Snowflake DBT. How can I set up a data warehouse with Snowflake? Easy. How can I work then with transforming data with DBT in the warehouse? And then you're already in the next step. You already have learned more,
Hmm.
and maybe in the next job you can use that.
Hmm. I see. And if you had to share, so now we kind of did like the advanced, the beginner,
Mhm.
and how does an expert, how does someone that have like more than 10, 15 years
Yeah,
stay up to date? Because maybe we can get comfortable with some tools, with some stack, and maybe right now we're hearing a lot data mesh, architectures, and a lot of data engineering concepts. I see
yeah.
that you're moving the head for
Uh,
the people who are listening the audio. So what would you comment on that point?
no, so I when you think of the natural progression, how is a career working? Right, you start
Mm-hmm.
maybe well in our case usually you go into you at the university, you study computer science, or nowadays you can also study data science or data engineering, and then you get your first job. You're going to find your way, which tools you're working with, which cloud platforms you're working with, and then you're going to build on top of that, right? If your first job was with AWS and you worked with stream processing on AWS and or data warehouses, then most likely the next job, because you're already good at that, you're going to go further and you're going to basically go deeper into that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe also you have then a few other things around there, but usually you go deeper into a topic. And I don't think that's a problem. I think not everybody needs to back to the learn everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a lot of experience and you're really good at a few crucial things, or at your job, is- if you're not by accident on Hadoop, which is going out, then okay, then you're safe. And I for me, the tip to really to experts would be just have an open mind, try out new things. You might not need them in your day-to-day job, and it might not be the thing that you needed at all. But like get a bit of experience here and there, but try to focus on what you like, try to focus on what you're good at, and become really good at that.
Right. Right. And so we've done a little bit the three broad levels of data engineering tips. And you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned looking for a junior, looking at the jobs. And when we speak about data engineering, a lot of the time when we do an academy, or when we try to shape better our skills, it's to land a better job or to improve in our jobs, to be more efficient, or access to the next step for us.
Mm.
Um, would you have maybe some, based on what you hear, what you've learned through time, mentoring or helping students, would you have some tips maybe regarding applications and finding the right jobs that suits me and that in which I will be able to grow
Mm.
depending on where I'm my level?
So in detail, it's always very personal, right? So
Hmm.
it's difficult to make these very detailed, give very detailed tips. In general, what's very important is documentation, and that's what I say to all my students. You have for
Hmm.
every course, you have the source codes, so you can just take this from my GitHub, put this on yours, add your own documentation to it, add your experience to it, write a blog post, document it, and then add that to your CV, so that people who look at your CV can actually get to your projects, to your personal projects that you've done. And so that's something I'm telling people very often, because that works. When I was looking at people, at I'm missing the words here. When I was looking at applicants
Mm-hmm.
for jobs, uh, looked at the CV, first few things in the CV, their history of work history, and then
Mm-hmm.
looked at personal projects, because personal projects also help you from an interviewer side. You can ask this person then something regarding these projects, right?
Right.
Very often it's difficult to ask people uh, questions, or you to create really good questions, because you don't really know what they've done in their job. And this way you can, okay, you have a project there, okay, understand that project, let's drill down if you have understood what you've done.
Hmm.
And also, if you from the interviewee, from your side, when you interview for a
Right.
job, you can then relate to this, right? So you get a question that you don't know, you haven't worked with that tool, but I worked with that tool, that other tool that is in the same area, and have that on the GitHub, and this is what I've done there. I like this kind of thing.
I see. I see. So hard to give a very specific advice because it's very individual. It depends really on each person. But I can understand that GitHub is having some projects on GitHub is very important for the people who are listening. And I would assume also, if I'm more advanced in my career, maybe at the beginning I have some projects on my GitHub, but then it's all like the projects in my company. Um, or or would you consider like always this kind of curiosity in enriching the GitHub and the projects?
Well, the thing is, let's see this from professional. From the problem, and I can say this from my own experience. That's also the reason why I started my LinkedIn, why I started on YouTube, and so on, writing blog posts back then. When you're a professional and you work at a company, you usually cannot share anything from within the company, right? You cannot
Right.
share. You cannot share the code that you've created. You cannot talk uh, largely about the things that you've done. So you need to actually find a way of showing people your experience. And these tools, what I said, having a good social media where you put out content that teaches other people what you know, talking about what you know in general, not in the specific thing that you do at the company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Creating a video about it, writing blog posts about it, and then basically putting this all out there, because people
Mm-hmm.
are going to research you. If I see somebody that applies to a job that I put out, I'm going to, first thing I would do is go on LinkedIn, find out who is this, what
Mm-hmm.
is this person doing. And nowadays it's super important to have this. And yeah.
Right. Right. And more than ever with LLMs, generative AI, where like content can it's content have never been easiest and fast to create. So having these unique things, having these unique sharings, can really help at the moment of finding new opportunities and figuring out. I mean, I assume. Correct me if you see something more, or if you see it differently. But yeah, I think it's very very important to try to have this uniqueness, and it helps also.
Yeah, and this, because this is as you say, this is your, people are seeing your thoughts, how you think about problems, how you talk about problems, maybe how you solve problems if you put stuff on GitHub. And also, it's not everything hidden. And that's the that 7 years ago, over 7 years, when I started here in social media, that was my goal. I knew everything I'm doing within the company, and nobody knows what I'm doing. And you don't know what is happening in 5 to 10 years, but if you don't put out stuff and collect a like create yourself a profile, or
Hmm.
show your profile, you will be in the masses out there. And if 50 people apply to a job, and a few people have really a good public profile with blog posts and sharing their knowledge and have a GitHub or with personal projects, these few people are already going to be one step ahead of you,
Hmm.
one step ahead of you.
Right. Right. Personal branding,
I don't like to call it personal brand because branding is always like that
marketing vibe.
yeah, marketing that sounds like Nike and Adidas and so on, right? But it's think of I, I'm for me like you could also say my brand is the engineer brand, right?
Hmm.
But it's just who I am. And I'm putting stuff out there to teach people, and also that they see how I'm what how I'm reacting, how I am. That's the
Hmm.
right thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and I believe that the more we grow, I guess, in this industry, the more we can find different kind of managements, and there are like many kind of companies that have unique cultures,
Mm,
and one culture can fits me or can makes me happy, and the other one doesn't match really with my vibes and what I need to grow. And so I think this is also a great way not only for applicants but also for, I mean, if I would be looking for a job, um, I can also check my employers and what they're producing and what are the mentality behind what they're doing or how do they communicate. And I believe that it goes in both ways, meaning, all right, now I'm seeking for a new opportunity. I have these two opportunities. As I apply, I'm not the only one checking on LinkedIn or on blog posts. What is the culture? How do they communicate on socials?
mm,
Because I believe that when I do an interview, it's I would sell myself, but I also need to check if this environment in which I intend to maybe work in the future match my vibe, and I will be able to grow as a person and professionally. What do you think about that?
yeah, yeah. That's why some people when they do interviews they come over as desperate, right? They need to show the company that they're good, and they are not even asking questions. Is the company actually, or they're not interviewing the company, right?
Mm,
Interviewing the people there. How does work look at the company? What's yeah, what are some culture features that you know from other employees,
mm,
and so on. How would it look like a typical workday, and do they have daily stand-ups and stuff like this? I think that is very important. And as I said, the interview is basically both sides interview each other, and it's a very important thing to look at that because
hmm.
you don't want to join somewhere that has maybe a nice name, but you're not happy there.
Right. Happiness. That would be an entire topic. um, I would like to ask you what, like, your state on mentoring,
Yeah.
and on finding guidance. I was discussing with Boyan. He's the author of an O'Reilly book about data science with Erin Python, and a data strategy book. And I think yeah, the our episode will be together, so you can check it on streaming platforms or YouTube.
Mhm.
And we discussed about advice and mentors, and I'm really interested in your opinion on this. But basically his message, his idea, is that everyone have to figure it out, like we're alone in this process, because if I put this on the shoulder of someone else, then in the future I'll blame them because I take the decision based on what they told me, kind of. But I'll he also told me that it's very important to have like people to look up to once we've decided that we want something. So that, with that introduction made, what is your point of view on mentoring and finding people that have achieved what you're looking to achieve?
So generally on mentoring, and this is very close to me because when I had my coaching program, I mentored people,
Mm-hmm.
and also at my old job when I had students and so on, and my team uh, colleagues. I always treat this, and this might sound cheesy, like from the Matrix, where Morpheus says to Neo, "I can only show you the door; you have to go through it." Right, and
Mm-hmm.
it's literally that. And when I did the coaching, how often was it that this the coachee had problems, didn't know where to go, and then I say, okay, these are areas you should look at. This could be your next step. But
Mm-hmm.
then actually looking that up, actually trying to get into this, trying to get some experience, that's what the what the other person needs to do, who's getting coached, who's getting mentored.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you cannot think that the mentor, like, I was almost never doing debugging on code. Sometimes yes, because it was fun, but
Mm-hmm.
you have as you should look at the mentor as somebody who can point you in the right direction, show you the right doors, but then you have to do it yourself. You're alone at the actual experience. You need to experience it yourself.
Hmm.
Right.
Right. It's like if I have a map and I go to someone to ask the direction, but I'm not sure where I want to go, then you can't show me anything. But if I have more clear that, oh, I want to, so let's say the map is data engineering, and I have some doubts regarding my next steps, etc.
Yeah.
But I consider this and I've done that in the past. Then I have information that might guide towards specific directions, and then
Yeah.
you can point them out on the map and explain how I could like take a car to go there, or like what tools can I use to go to the specific intended direction based on what feels the
Abs-
best for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And but for finding mentors, I think it can be difficult.
Hmm.
I personally, I never had a mentor because at that time, what I did, actually, nobody else did.
Yeah.
Like,
I have this saying, I mean, I sincerely believe that if one have applied MapReduce in a professional context, then there is no mentoring possible. There is no because MapReduce was here at the beginning in a short time. So yeah, that's my
oh,
saying. Sorry, I cut you.
no, I was thinking more in the
Yes.
broad thing, like uh, that when you think of like having a mentor in a company. Some companies have a really good culture where you are automatically getting a mentor.
Hmm.
Right? Other companies don't have that. You need to try to get in touch with people, hopefully with more experience, right? Because a mentor
Hmm.
should have more experience, should have worked through this already, and then try to unofficially have this person as your mentor.
Hmm.
Right. That, yeah, that's the big upside. So for instance, I had people um, when I did the coaching, I had not only students who wanted to become a data engineer, but I also had people who were working at their job and they had problems. They needed to fix stuff, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to improve this. And so
Hmm.
I came in, and together we were trying to figure out, okay, what could be your next moves, what are the important pieces you should focus on,
Hmm.
and this way um, it helped them. So I was basically the virtual mentor.
All right. Right. And um, would you recommend to anyone who doesn't have a mentor in their company, or even if they have a mentor, would you recommend to try to have like multiple person to look up to, so that they can balance a bit their opinions and the tips they're receiving?
Mm. So when we look at the internet right now, right,
Hmm.
every you're going to find an answer to almost everything. And Unfortunately, with us engineers, it's not that large. For instance, on YouTube, it's Ben, the Seattle data guy, me, your podcast, and like who else is there? But in many other cases, many other professions, there are a lot of people on YouTube that you can follow, that you can use them as your mentors. As okay, what are they talking about? What are they doing? I should maybe look into these topics as well.
Hmm.
Right. But for specific problems, that will not work, right? If you have specific problems, you could use I don't know, a Discord server like ours from the academy, or there are other platforms where you can ask questions and try to get answers there, or try to find somebody.
Right. Right. And going back to the academy, are there specific problems or struggles that you can see with your students, that are more common in the data engineering field, and how do you address them? How do you
Mm.
address these problems?
So one common thing that I see is still that there are people who don't understand how they start from zero with a architecture, with a platform.
Okay.
That's something that I want to address. I already have a course in there, but I think that's still something that people struggle with. And
Hmm.
it gets more complicated every day because there are new tools out there every day.
Yeah.
And then you have these buzzwords and these hype things like data mesh and everything, where people are
Landing
just
zone.
confused. Oh
Yeah.
no!
Now what do I do?
And now what do I do? I think that's an important part where people struggle
Yeah.
um, with the basics. Actually, not that much. So Python and SQL is usually not that much. People don't struggle that much.
Hmm.
Um,
ChatGPT is very good at doing PySpark and Python, like queries and all of that.
but
Can be.
yeah, but as an engineer,
Do like you would say, go to the documentation and read, right?
you should understand the stuff. You should know how to do this.
Exactly.
I mean, when you yes, stuff like ChatGPT is good that it can already create you like a baseline or
Uh-huh.
a template, but you usually need to go. You're no, let me say it like this. Usually, what you want to do is more complicated than ChatGPT can produce.
Hmm.
So in the end, you need to have the knowledge anyways.
Yeah.
Right? It can yes, it can speed up the process, but the basics
Hmm.
you need to understand.
Right. Right. I feel like ChatGPT can be a very good way to framework how to learn something. For example, I have this problem. How would you approach it?
Yeah.
And then I take each piece and I go find in the documentation, or maybe for some specific little code that I need to do, I can ask directly. But sometimes I have to iterate, or sometimes it will mix, for example, some Python code for PySpark, or sometimes if you want to make a specific like visualization with Matplotlib, it will want to convert to a Panda data frame, which is not good when your data frame is like mm, with Spark behind and like big data. But I see, and well, to directly speaking of ChatGPT, and I feel like speaking about data engineering, LLMs have came into the game, so I feel obligated to ask. But how do you at your academy approach LLMs integration, and how do you view this new role of prompt engineering, where we're going to be able to directly query databases and do things just with the English language? How do you see all of that?
So okay, that's a that question has multiple parts.
Yeah.
um, so do I treat it? What I want to bring in this year into the academy is a new project where we actually integrate ChatGPT,
Hmm.
because I think it's important, and uh, it's something that can help an engineer.
Hmm.
For me, how I am. like you said, like for me, when I go in there, I usually try to show me an example code for this and that, and then I'm going to improve on that example code.
Hmm.
Right? But yeah, ChatGPT, I think this is going to come, that you ask questions in natural language, it automatically in the background creates you the things. I've done a video, actually, for Synlytic on my YouTube channel about there. They have a like a BI tool, and you can just chat with a chatbot, and that chatbot is going to automatically create you the charts and everything that you need.
Yeah, I've seen that on Power BI. I think they have Copilot behind, and yeah, it's very impressive.
Uh, so that kind of stuff, I think that is coming, and we cannot run from it. But people, from what I see, people are overestimating the power of it right now.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is going to replace us in a year.
Yeah.
Let's talk in a year. But one thing I want to add one problem that
Yes,
because we were talking about
I was
problems.
about to go back to this.
Um, I I was actually thinking about this while you took over, because I pointing to a specific thing is always difficult. One thing I noticed
Hmm.
is that people don't have the stamina to actually go through the topics and actually learn it and apply it and do the hands-on parts. And
Hmm.
people jump into this, think it's going to be easy, and they actually they like with every New Year's resolution, this year I'm going to do this, and then you do it
Hmm.
for a week, and then
Hmm.
hasn't worked.
Right.
And the good it was in the academy, it was in the coaching. Whenever you see the good students, people who actually then get the jobs, people who excel in their career afterwards, are the people who go through the topics, who keep putting in the work and
Hmm.
trying to better themselves, also work through the problems themselves, and these are the people who actually really benefit from it. There's the large amount of people, and I learned to live with this. For me, it was in the beginning very hard to see, where I know it's everything is there, you just have to go through this documented, and then it's
Yeah.
but why are you not doing this? But
Yes.
I don't know, that's how people are. um and that's the biggest problem that people have, not the stamina to go through this, or not the endurance. I don't know the right word for that, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's like having a gym subscription. You go the first day, second day, you're like, yeah, I'm getting in shape, and I'm getting in shape, but I'm not going to the gym anymore. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah. After a
but
month, look at me. My belly is still here. It doesn't work.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I see. No, yeah, and it makes sense, and I believe that through doing this deep work, um, when you have all the right tools to learn, all the right principles, all the right concepts, yeah, it can only be exponential the results through time, because yeah, if I do the work and if I go through each of the steps, it's yeah, stamina. I see what you mean by stamina and endurance,
Yeah,
consistency,
yeah,
like
yeah. To
practice.
stay with it and really try to make it, try to become an engineer. And it's not,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have this on your questions list, but that's also something for me. Like people come in and they ask me, can I become a data engineer in 3 months, in 6 months? Like, I don't know. This totally depends on you. You you can get through everything in 6 months, but can you
Yeah.
get a job in 6 months? That depends on how much you apply. That depends on your CV.
Right.
That depends on
Right.
how much drive you have to push this forward.
Hmm.
And
Do you
it's
have re- do you have recommendations of where does your student might apply, or is it something that you just say LinkedIn or different places?
Yeah, doesn't really matter.
You just
People,
go out
the
there.
only thing is that what some people do wrong is that they apply for that they don't apply for junior roles. They apply to professional roles immediately, and they're not a
Mhm.
professional, so they will not get a job.
Right,
On the other side, people are saying, "Oh, I don't find any junior roles out there."
right.
It's difficult. Sometimes they are not called junior roles. Sometimes they're not called data engineer. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to actually look at the
Mm.
entrance roles and figure out, is this a data engineer or is this data engineering adjacent?
Mm-hmm.
Because people very often think I can only become a data engineer if my job is immediately data engineer, and they don't think like 5 years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your job today is not called data engineer, but you're doing the engineering work, and that experience that you build over the next 2 years allows you to then do that job in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like I sometimes I had a few students like I was last month I was talking to someone from let's call a large consulting company.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to drop any names, but like he said, I have. Did he have 10 or 15 years of experience? I think 10 years of experience. I have 10 years of experience as a consultant, and I want to move to engineering. But if I now move to data engineering, I will not get paid as somebody with 10 years experience.
Right.
Well, of course, like
Yeah.
why would you? But because that is the wrong way of doing this. You should not, if with a lot of experience, you should not try to make that switch, because you will have to, yeah, sacrifice then on money.
Mm-hmm.
But the better way is to find a job in your area that you are, where you can use that added knowledge of data engineering and slowly then progress into that new role. Might
Right.
be through 2 or 3 new jobs that you take
Mm.
every 2 years or something. But you it makes more sense for experienced people to slowly progress into this through the added
Right.
knowledge.
Right. I see. Right. It's not. There are not like two paths here. There are not like one I need to necessarily continue in consulting, and the other is okay, I start over and I do data engineering. There are ways, hybrid roles where like you can do both and slowly transition with consistency and practice towards what you're trying to, whatever skills you're trying to get and upgrade,
Yeah.
improve. Super interesting. Before doing the quick, we're running around an hour of recording, and I hope everyone here with us listening are getting a ton of value. I feel like it's super interesting to have your points of view on that, and for the people who are in your academy, even it can be interesting to hear about how you see. Maybe they've heard you talk about the subjects many times before.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have any questions. I was about to ask data engineering and the security around, for example, starting everything from scratch. Let's say I choose a cloud provider and I want to create everything from scratch. I can ask myself, all right, how do I make everything secure? Because I might be very good at data engineering. I might know exactly what I want, but I'm not that comfortable in making sure all this data is safe and all the systems I have out there are safe. I know that AWS, Azure, Google, they are good to like provide security layers, but what would you answer to this kind of questions that one can ask?
Mm. So how I'm always I'm having I have a philosophy of two things when I think about this, two things that immediately come to my mind. First of all is having good interfaces, like having really well defined interfaces between tools, between parts of the platform. So from a potential attacker perspective, you have only these few ways or a few options of attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And also coming from the computer networking side, when you create a
Mm-hmm.
firewall, what's the first thing that you do? You close everything, right? You
Mm-hmm.
close everything and then you open only a few things.
Mm-hmm.
And people should always attack it like this. If it's the actual firewall or the interfaces in the platform, or if it's the uh, identity and access management, the roles and the rights that people actually have,
Mm-hmm.
always first close down everything and then just open the really necessary things.
Right.
And above that, then it gets very technical, and you, of course, you need to do a lot of research. You need to maybe consult with a security expert.
Mm-hmm.
Very often,
Right.
privacy is a big thing as well. Like that
Yeah.
data, am I actually allowed to store that data? How long am I allowed to store that data?
Right.
Does this need to have specific access management and so on? It's this part. This is basically two parts. Can be very tricky.
Hmm. And you would definitely include this in the data engineer role, right?
Yes and no.
Nice.
So I think uh, people should have the basic understanding of
Uh-huh.
these things. Now there are two different types of engineers, and this you can think of this as somebody who's working in a startup, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's and more like a greenfield thing where they start from zero, and other engineers who are working at companies like Facebook where the frame is already there, right?
Right.
For them, they don't really have the security, these problems. They more have the problems of the actual data, working with the data, making sure the data is clean, is good, doesn't have any errors in it, and so on and so on.
Right.
So for these people in the large corporations, most of the time they don't have that problem. But if you're working on in the startup on the green field, you're building something for me, yeah,
Hmm.
that's it.
Yes.
But
Awesome.
yeah, but then that's what I mean. It's very difficult to really teach this in an academy. I can only teach the basics
Right.
because it's going to look different on AWS. The actual doing is going to look different on AWS than on Azure, and it's going to look different on whatever
Right.
Databricks than on Snowflake.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I see. Yeah, totally. And also data engineering and data architecture are like two. I mean, I think we could draw a line between data science, data engineer, and data architecture. And data engineering and data architecture can be related, but it's still like the data architecture part. Maybe I'm a data engineer and very good with data warehouse, data lakes, streaming processes, batch, near real time, and all of that. But coming to data architecture, like you said, maybe I've been only using the data and creating these ETLs and moving the data, and
Yeah,
but I haven't been able to practice that much about architecture, the architecture part.
yeah, yeah. That's for me. That's actually the most fun part, the architecture part.
Yeah,
Starting from zero, having a problem, trying to figure out how can I actually solve this? How can I build this platform to make something out of it? And
yeah,
so that's more the architecture part. And that's why I also want to bring in this new course about the architecture, um, basically an architecture two
mm-hmm.
course to help people actually make this decision or start from the green field. And
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's challenging. It's challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging because maybe like AWS and Azure are similar, but it's tricky to like compare exactly the same tools in front of each other, and you would do something here that doesn't exist here because there is another way, another process to do it.
Yeah.
Um, Tricky.
Yeah, or you are, let's say you are you are on Azure,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's like also as an architect, if you think about the just the architect role, forget about
Yeah,
the engineering and the actual doing part, like just the architect.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you. You have to talk to the scientists or to the people who then do the actual processing. You need to
Right.
talk to the business. What are the goals that they have? What are the constraints that they are going to set on you? And and then the legal stuff with GDPR and everything. Ugh.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a tricky role.
Yeah, and the cost management and cost prediction is a very tricky part too,
That's true.
because yeah, do you have one comment to do on cost management,
Well,
cost
it
prediction? Sorry.
yeah, it's I mentioned this also in my LinkedIn course that I did with LinkedIn Learning, problem solving for data engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one thing is the cost management, especially now if we were talking about the startups and the architects and so on,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it's not that easy anymore to predict the costs.
Right.
In the beginning, like a few years ago, it was quite easy. You had the virtual machines, and then okay, I have these virtual servers. These are the configurations. They're going to run for
Yeah.
that many hours a day,
Uh-huh.
or
That's it.
24 hours a
Right.
day, and then that's easy numbers. Now
Yeah.
you have to pay for the processing time, for the RAM used during the processing time. You have to pay for the messages sent through the message queue, and uh, like it's getting very complicated to actually estimate what the charges are going to be.
Right.
Like,
Right. And if you have, like, for example, in Azure, then maybe you'll have Synapse, and on top of that, you'll have Databricks, and you'll have compute assigned to both of them. And maybe you'll have a Power BI subscription on top of that, and
yeah.
containers, and
And then you have functions, and these functions are going to run, and they're going to they're going to
right,
add to the bill. And how long is each function going to run for each run, and how much resources it's going to need.
right, right, right.
It's in larger things, it's very complicated, and funnily enough, it gets very expensive very quick.
Yeah.
So
The cloud is great to start, but it can very get expensive very
yeah,
fast.
yeah,
Um,
it's very easy to have a six-figure a year architecture.
yeah, I guess that's a skill I can add on my curriculum. This is something I'm great at. Six figures bills. Um, well, that's awesome. We've run further than 1 hour. I had an amazing time. I have three little questions for you, Andreas.
Sure.
But before doing those questions, I want to thank you a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I had an amazing time asking you about data engineering, and knowing your well, getting to know a bit more on your expert vision, a bit more on how you've built the academy, your background, and everything we discussed. It have been fascinating. So thanks a lot for sharing with us. I had an amazing time, like I said.
Yeah, thanks. You're also a great interviewer, and I think we had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thanks. So for the people who are still listening, how can one find you? So you're present on LinkedIn. You have the academy. You have YouTube. I'll put all the link in the description if you have interest. But would you recommend one platform for people to reach out to you?
So usually the easiest way to reach out to me is actually email. It's actually just
Email.
write to us, hello@learndataengineering.com. Just write us.
Okay.
Um, because with social media and having all these channels, it gets
Right.
difficult. And with LinkedIn, it's quite annoying because you can't just send me a message. You need to be connected with me, and I get so many connection requests. I actually never
Yeah.
never accept them because you only have I don't know how many. So write an email if you have any question, or get. That's also a good thing. Get into our Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get to the Discord on our platform, learndataengineering.com, on the bottom, we have a link to our Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
And we have basically two areas there. We have a member area for the academy and a free area for everybody else.
Awesome.
And
I'll put the links in the description.
that would be cool.
So if you come, so if you've listened to this episode with us, and you're still here, when you join and you want to join the Discord, leave a little message, so that they know in the Discord that you come from this episode.
That would be cool.
Maybe you'll have a little other people who will be like you. So that's my pre-last question, and my last question for you, and I thank you again, Andres, for your time, is: would you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community? It can be professional, it can be personal, it can be anything we talked about in this episode.
Well, I think for your community, I hope everybody out there, I hope you keep listening to these events. I hope you keep learning something, because Thomas is doing a great job here. Um, like I said a few minutes ago, keep adding new stuff to your knowledge. Don't stay with what you know now, and be curious, and yeah, use this platform to get information about new stuff, and yeah, keep learning.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Andreas, and I wish you to have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.